about 2 years ago, I met someone, and typically when I first meet someone, I always like to ask, when's the last time you pushed yourself out of your comfort zone? Because that's something that I'm actively, it seems like I'm always doing, and just so I can like understand them better, I typically like to ask someone like, yeah, when's the last time you pushed yourself out of your comfort zone? Like whatever it is, it could be something super small, like I'm just super interested in hearing whatever it is you consider out of your comfort zone, right? Because to me, I feel like a lot is shared when you like share that information with someone. And so he had asked me the same thing afterwards, which I was not prepared for. And I told him, like, I don't even know what it was at the time, but it was like, oh yeah, I had just done this, you know. He was like, awesome, like what's next? Because I also mentioned, I think, like how I like to push myself. And so I told him, for me, I've always wanted to take dance classes. Not so much because, like, to learn how to dance, because I'm a very good, like, dancer naturally. But more so because of the social aspect. So I've mentioned on the channel before that I used to struggle with social anxiety. I like to visit like that subreddit and answer questions when I can, to sort of like give others everything like I've learned from my experiences, my takeaways, my whatevers. And so, and at the time, I think I was still kind of like in between, like the version of me that couldn't talk to anyone and the version of me now where I can talk to anyone. And so I bring all this up because, yeah, he had asked me like what's next, and I told him dance classes. Like, I'm really nervous, but dance classes. And he said something like, cool, so when's that gonna happen? And I remember telling him, like, I don't know exactly when, but sometime soon. And I didn't really stay in touch with that guy that much because I guess we didn't have much in common. But I remember, like, I think the conversation kind of ended around there because I think his answer kind of told me, like okay, like, that's the kind of stuff you're interested in. And at the time, like, yeah, I was pushing myself socially. That was something I was working on. You know, everyone's different, but that's where I was at the time. And I wanted to like join and do like dance classes because I love dancing, but more so like to be in an environment where you're like actively around others, engaging. Because my line of work isn't really like stuff where you engage with others that much. It is very like solitary. Which when I was deciding my major and all that, like I was really scared of like interacting and talking and everything like that, socializing with others. And so it's interesting how like there's always different versions of you, or at least for me, I'm always pushing myself. I'm always like, what's something I'm scared of? And 2 years ago at the time, it was like, yeah, the idea of being in a room with others and like me not necessarily having the expectation to talk, but yeah, when you go to a dance class, yeah, you know, it's not like speech class or anything, but there's an element of like talking. And so yeah, about 2 years ago, oh my gosh, I don't know when it was exactly, let's just say 2 years ago, I go to this dance studio, I look up, right, a dance place. And so yeah, after that conversation with that guy, even though I told him like, I don't know exactly when, but it's gonna happen. And I think because of him, it was kind of like, what are you waiting for? And I have a lot of things set up in my mind where it's like, it gives me cues. So the moment I find myself rushing, it's like a cue to like, okay, I think you need to slow down, right? Because if you feel like you have to rush, then chances are, I think you really need to slow down. And so likewise with this, it's like, if you don't know when exactly and you're nervous and you know this is something you want to do to get to that next version of yourself, then literally like, what are you waiting for? And the fact that I didn't want to do it at that time, to me is like, okay, I think it's time. Like, like if you mentioned it, if you shared it already. To me, like, I don't know, there's always a reason to everything. Something as simple as meeting someone, even if it doesn't like go anywhere, but it did go somewhere for me because it helped me to understand, like, well, maybe I should do this. Because if that's the first thing that popped up in your head, so I signed up, and within a few days I was doing dance classes, and I just like signed up at a like dance studio, and it had like all these different focuses, and one of the focuses was pole dancing, which is not something I've ever thought of. It's not something that's ever called to me. It's not something like oh yeah, like, no, like I just want to be in an environment almost like a school setting, right, where talk and everything like that, have somewhere to go, classes, etc. Like that's what I wanted at the time, but specifically for the social aspect. And so to me, this is how like God and the universe always works so interestingly, because it's like always giving you exactly what you need, even when you don't even like realize it. So to make a long story short, I ended up becoming super invested in the pole dancing classes. I was taking like 3 a week on average. I was getting so much stronger. I was doing everything I had to do to get to where I wanted to be. And so it just became like so much fun. So much fun. And I'm also the kind of person where like if I do something, I go all in. So I was a little bit heavier at the time, which I thought was cute whenever I first started, but I don't care. Because I already knew like I'm gonna have the body of my dreams, even though like it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. So I didn't allow like that to get in the way. And I was super focused on like the social aspect. Like I really, really, really wanted to work on my social aspects. And so yeah, by the end of the year I was super in love with it. But I also like stopped going there after a year because something else was happening. I don't ever remember. So many things happened to me, and like I just remember like not going anymore. But prior to not going anymore, I even had a pole like installed in my apartment because again, like when I do something, it's like 100%. Like I'm not gonna, all this time, all this energy, all this, and I'm only going to class like 3 times a week. Like, no, I need to like, every single day I need to like, or every other day, whatever it was. And so after a year, I stopped going because something happened. Like, I don't even know what happened. I think I was ready to evolve to the next thing I was working on. And so for like this past year, I've been doing what I call like maintenance, because this past year was more focused on my emotional processing my trauma that I got from my upbringing. I think that's fine. Okay. And but yeah, so I did something this past year called like maintenance polling. And whenever I say polling, I mean pole dancing, but yeah, polling. Because literally it's just you and the pole. And so yeah, just like making sure that I can still spin the way I used to spin. I can climb the way I used to climb. I did lose some like other things that I used to be able to do 2 years ago. Like now I can't do it, but I already know like it's gonna happen again one day, so I'm not like worried about it. Like if the time needed at last year, for example, like if the time was needed more so for like, okay, I need to process things, I need to work on all these other aspects of myself, but physically it's gonna get back to where it used to be. And if not, like it's gonna be even better. And so yeah, this past year I was doing like maintenance polling. So for me that just means like just making sure I can keep up with like a similar level of what I was doing before. But like I said, I already know there are a lot of things I can't do right now, not because I like I'm trying to get to is I went on the pole again today. It's been, I want to say 2 to 3 weeks, because between the holidays and prior to my alignment, which was like the last day of 2024, like a couple of weeks, I think even maybe like a month or so leading up to that, it was a lot. But from my experience, it's always a lot before good things happen. It's always very intense. It's never smooth sailing and then, wow, you know, what I've been working towards came out of nowhere. No, it's usually like, from my experience, like just almost like your body knows. Just like how a caterpillar gets into that cocoon before it becomes a butterfly. It knows, like, you need to rest, you need to slow down, you need to, right? And even though processing and healing is very exhausting and draining, it is very essential. Like, and so whenever you're feeling these intense emotions and you can't get the energy to do what you typically could be able to do, it's really interesting how your body induces this cocoon state. So it's like you're forced to rest. I don't like using that word, but you know. And I don't want to say depression because that's a very heavy word. And I know I've experienced it and everything. But yeah, those few weeks, like from Thanksgiving to Christmas, it was just like so much for me. And I remember like not prioritizing polling, because like there's like so many things I have to prioritize, and I am very like mindful of how I choose things. But yeah, I went back on the pole today, and after about 3 minutes I was exhausted. Like, I want to say more so from the spinning than anything, but I thought that was interesting. And it's almost funny, and again, going back to the cues, as much as I want to say, like, oh, I wish I kept up with it, or oh, I wish, you know, like, oh, I should have, it's like, no. You have to understand that the only reason why you aren't where you thought you're supposed to be is because you haven't been putting in the time. And you haven't been putting in the time because we've been focusing on our mental health, which to me is way more important than, I guess, polling in this instance. But yeah, like after about 3 minutes, I felt it. I felt so dizzy. And I was like, yay! Like, I get to look forward to working towards that again. And again, I know it sounds a bit like head scratching, but there's beauty in that. There's beauty in knowing I get to start over again, even though I'm not starting over from complete scratch. But, you know, the last time I polled, let's just say 2 to 3 months ago, I was spinning, I was flying, I was doing the most. And just because I can't do that right now doesn't mean like, it just means I have to just put in that time to get to that point again. And how exciting, because it's almost like a different me experiencing it. Because the last time, and this is the first time I polled this year. This is the first time. Today was the first time I polled in 2025. And I've noticed ever since my alignment, I'm experiencing things in a whole new way. In a whole new way. Things that I didn't notice before, I'm starting to notice. And so with that, I'm really excited to see how different polling is going to feel now compared to last year while I was processing and feeling and all that, compared to 2 years ago where I was still working up the courage to talk, to be around people. And I know that sounds like what's so hard about talking? But if you knew where I was years ago, it would be like, oh, okay. So again, that's just how I prioritize things, and that's how things are coming together.